This is PIX on Politics Daily with Dan Mannarino.
Hey everybody, welcome to PIX on Politics Daily. I'm Dan Mannarino. It is December 2nd. Hopefully everybody had a great Thanksgiving. I haven't talked to you since then, so hopefully you enjoyed some time and some good food. And here we go, okay? Because today, I know you all thought maybe the elections were behind us, but no. There was a special election happening over in Jersey City. We're paying close attention to the race for mayor. We had the debate between the council member James Solomon, former governor of New Jersey, Jim McGreevey, last week on PIX 11. And this is all because in November, nobody out of the 7 candidates reached that 50% threshold. So it went to a runoff. And today is the runoff, right? So let me bring in New Jersey reporter Jim Vasil. He's been following this race very closely. So Jim, good to see you, my friend.
Hi, Dan. Thanks for having me on, as always.
So, Jim, there's obviously the weather could impact how many people actually turn out to the polls today, right? And it's a runoff election, so the turnout is not expected to be huge, but somebody will get 50% tonight. Let's talk about Councilmember James Solomon and former Governor of New Jersey, Jim McGreevey, and kind of where they stand and where they differ. Let me begin on the topic of affordability, Jim, right? And what do you know about where they you just spoke to McGreevey, right?
Yeah, just a few minutes ago, he voted over at a firehouse on Sip Avenue. And, I think where these candidates in general terms, where they differ is who their target voter is, right? I think Mr. McGreevey is kind of hoping that the generational, per se, I guess you could say, generational Jersey City resident, the one who's has roots here and has lived here for generations with their family. I think he's hoping that those kind of voters come out. As far as Solomon goes, I think that he's hoping that maybe a younger crowd comes out, maybe the kind of crowd that perhaps, was considering living in Manhattan, but perhaps the rent was too high and now they're in Jersey City. And perhaps there's just young people who just chose to live in Jersey City, not even considering living in Manhattan. So I think that's in general terms, I think that's where these two candidates really differ is, one is kind of has, that old school feel. One has a more of a new school feel. It is an interesting storyline.
Well, and it's very reminiscent of what played out in Manhattan, in the 5 boroughs, in the race for New York City mayor between a former governor, Andrew Cuomo, who ran as the establishment candidate, and then the newcomer, right? You had the younger generation looking at Zohran Mamdani, and Zohran Mamdani, of course, pulled it off. But those candidates really ran on the topic of affordability. And so are these candidates. They just have a different approach to what they see as the affordability agenda. So let me play a clip from the debate on affordability, Jim, and then we'll talk about it.
Promise I make to you, Jersey City, is that I will fight to make sure you can stay in your homes, that we create more affordable units. And I'm talking about what we can do, not what we can't.
Just to be clear, Mr. Solomon, the question was how many of those units in the first term?
So hundreds in the first term of the genuinely affordable units, thousands affordable units.
Okay. Hundreds of the 1,000.
Of the 1,000 a month.
Okay. You have 30 seconds to respond to it.
Yeah, I mean, Dan, that's just not realistic. And, with James saying he's going to cap all increases, with James saying he's going to achieve $1,000 a month rent increases, to do that would require $2.95 billion on the backs of property taxpayers.
So in just for some context here, the question was about affordable housing, and Councilmember Solomon says that he would like to create these $1,000 a month apartments. Jim McGreevey saying, well, that's not possible. How would you pay for it? What does that sound like? New York City, free rent, free buses, free childcare. How are you going to pay for it was the big question for Zohran Mamdani each and every step of the way. And Solomon was saying, well, we can charge the wealthier, the developers to pay for these apartments. And that's kind of where he's looking at. But then there's the issue of property tax and so on and so forth, and that's a big issue in Jersey City as well. So what are you hearing on the terms of who people are looking at to make things really more affordable?
Well, you mentioned that Councilman Solomon, he wants to create these $1,000 units, and I believe he also has another tier, I guess you could say, of $1,500 a month, dollar a month rents. And so, in contrast to that, you're hearing former Governor McGreevey talking about how that's just not realistic, and that the city, in his opinion, needs to rely on faith-based institutions to upzone. He referenced that a number of times during the debate. It comes down to which plan voters think is more realistic, right? Is it more realistic? Do voters think it's more realistic that the developers that have just been spamming kind of luxury housing all over the city, in the words of James Solomon, or do we turn to like Mr. McGreevy said, those faith-based institutions, and so they can build up units, and also members of that community can worship where they want and have that convenience as well. It's two different solutions to a problem of affordability that has plagued not just Jersey City, right? I mean, it's also out in kind of the outer suburbs as well. I think we all know that, but we'll see what voters think is the more realistic plan.
Yeah, I mean, and both of them had some tough questions to face about what do you do if a developer doesn't want to pay the to supplement those lower income rents, right? And for Jim McGreevy is what do you do if faith-based institutions say, hey, our land's our land and we don't want to build on it? So both of them have kind of those questions to answer, Jim. Just a question about people that are out and about voting right now. You said you caught up with McGreevy at the polling place. Were there a lot of people there?
There were a few people there, and as you mentioned at the top of the show, voter turnout for runoff elections is, it's not expected to be too strong, and on a cold and rainy day, no snow here in Jersey City yet, if at all, but. That may be further, affecting turnout. And I want to share actually a few numbers with you, Dan. I spoke yesterday with Rider University political professor Micah Rasmussen. I was interviewing him yesterday as Governor-elect Cheryl appointed Lieutenant Governor-elect Dale Caldwell to be her Secretary of State. And we got to talking about the Jersey City mayor race and, what runoff turnout is expected to be. And he told me that as of yesterday, a little bit more than 5,200 mail ballots were returned, which is 62% of November's total mail-in vote of 8,400. So he said you can also look at past runoff turnouts, which suggest 25% of Jersey City's total number of registered voters, which is, he says, 177,000. So that maybe those numbers kind of skew a little bit downward today with the bad weather. Yeah. But yeah, those are just some numbers that Professor Rasmussen provided me yesterday, and I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, it is interesting, especially but overall in November the turnout in Jersey City wasn't necessarily high, and there were other big races. Obviously, the race for governor was on the ballot as well.
I want to add one more thing. I was a few weeks ago, this was actually right before the general election. I was speaking with a staffer of one of the two campaigns here, and they told me that as they were canvassing, they caught up with a voter who didn't even know there was a runoff election going on. They told me that, this was after the general election, and this was as the runoff election was getting set up. They encountered a voter who voted on election day or in the general election, and they didn't know that there was a runoff. I guess that person just didn't know what the result was or didn't care to find out the result. So, at least at first there was a little bit of a struggle, I guess, in terms of getting people to, understand, hey, you got to come out again. I understand that you already came out once or you already voted by mail once, but we need you to do it again, and we need you to support our candidate. So I thought that was interesting too. And it, for what it's worth, Dan, it's not like most people have to, most voters have to deal with this, right? I mean, you usually just twice a year if you're registered to a party, or once a year if you're not registered to a party, and then you wipe your hands clean and walk away.
But there's a lot on the ballot. There's certainly a lot on the ballot, and one of those important things is housing. Let me play another moment from the debate. And then we'll talk about it.
When he talks about 5,000 units, it's going to require upwards of a $3 billion subsidy. So if you're a property taxpayer in Jersey City, your property taxes will go up, your school taxes will go up, your MUA fees will go up. For working families, they will be outpriced from their homes. to engage in this fanciful prospect.
You. Mr. McGreevy, thank you. 30 seconds to respond to.
Sure. Again, it is the developers who are going to subsidize this, right? Not the homeowners. We have a commitment to stabilize property taxes by going after corruption. And again, this is a reason why the developers are funding Jim's campaign and not mine, right? Because Jim is telling their talking points, telling their story. My commitment is to build those affordable homes and stabilize your property taxes.
All right, so the question really was about property taxes, and they go back to affordable housing and so on and so forth. But I did ask them both point blank. Property taxes higher, lower, or are they going to stay the same? McGreevy said they're going to stay the same, and Solomon says, "Well, we'll stabilize them." And then I had to push him a little bit. I know you watched the debate, Jim, but I had to say, "What does stabilize mean? Does that mean they're going up and then they level off?" And he said, "Well, yeah, they'll go up with inflation." So it sounds like they both kind of differ on the property tax issue for the 30% of people who are homeowners.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. I was watching the debate, and I wasn't surprised to hear that. I think that's a theme that you saw even in the governor's race, right? I mean, between Mikey Sherrill and Jack Ciattarelli, you heard Jack maybe say, your property taxes will go down, we'll cut and cap. And, Mikey Sherrill kind of gave different answers at different times. I think the common theme was, it's property taxes are not going to go down. It's just not going to happen. Right. So the candidates aren't going to make a blatant promise that they know they can't keep. And so, when listening to that, it truly was not too surprising. But I think, if you live in Jersey City, you would certainly welcome a freeze, a multi-year freeze of property taxes. And, to stabilize taxes, I think, Mr. Solomon's kind of opening the door in case they need a little bit more breathing room to help subsidize these affordable units. But I think he's kind of going for what you heard Mayor-elect Mamdani say in New York, where, if people are, in these homes where they're able to not pay as much property tax, not pay as much rent, they add more to the economy. And, there's an economic, boost that way. So at least that's his philosophy.
The only slight difference, Jim, in the race for governor and their promises about property taxes are that the governor can't set property taxes. A mayor sets property taxes for each town. And that's why it was so important to get them on the record here. Because a lot of people like to punt to the governor, but it's like for example, I was interviewing Steve Fulop when he was running for governor, and he was like, "No, I'm not going to raise property taxes." I'm like, but you did when you were mayor. So how can people believe you as a governor if you did it while you were mayor? But you bring up a really valid point that they're just not going to go down. That's just not feasible given the climate that we're in. Go ahead.
No, I don't think anyone running for office in New Jersey would say that and then think that their voters would we would all like that to be true. I don't think there's anyone who wants to pay an exuberant more amount of property taxes, but it is, New Jersey, you look at New Jersey has an extremely high state budget too. It's almost $60 billion, and we'll see what it is, if that's going to go up or down under future Governor Mikey Sherrill. But that's another story.
Okay. We're going to leave it there, Jim. I know it's going to be a long day for you, so hopefully we get the results. The polls close at 9, right? 9 p.m. tonight, or is it 8?
8 or 9. I'm not.
Sure. We'll have hopefully have results.
I think it might be 8 o'clock.
Yeah, we hopefully will have the results on the news at 10. But thank you for joining us, Jim. All right, we'll talk to you.
Thank you.
All right, everybody. And so we'll be paying close attention. So stay with us here on PIX 11 Plus, PIX11.com, news at 10, and then a full recap tomorrow morning on the PIX 7 Morning News, where we will dive into these numbers. Also, there's a big runoff election in Hoboken for mayor as well. So we're following that just as closely. All right, so we'll see you back here tomorrow.